Hi, thanks for having me on Wide to Tall Film Festival. My name is Jeevan. I am founder of Monochromatic Pictures and partner at Protagonist by M. In those labels, I function as a creative producer and director. As creative producer in my labels, I pretty much work as a showrunner in our projects. I am true and true a visual storyteller, I would like to think that, but I've also started as a writer. I've worked through the various production roles, from editing to directing, producing, even PAing, so I've done it all. And in these two labels right now, I sit as in a showrunner capacity whereby I see through concepts from start all the way till its delivery, and I work towards I guess world building. That's what we are very big on in Monochromatic Pictures and Protagonists. We are all world building into world building narratives, and that's our forte. In my capacity, I think as creative producer and director, I'm really passionate about world building, and that's where a lot of my stories from the past and even present day, they evolve from that. And in world building is pretty much what that phrase means actually is we literally come up with that entire fictional or creative universe, from the characters to the geography that they sit in, to what they wear, maybe how they speak, to music, everything, like in terms of like kind of being very godlike, all right? Like you have this power of like kind of creating a whole mini universe right there on your page, as a script writer, and then see it come to fruition, when you turn it into a video medium, and then finally when you put it out there for the public to watch, it's rewarding. It's also a scary place to be. So world building, I think, for a lot of content creators will be familiar with that, because in essence that's what they do. They come up with the script, they create that world, they create those characters, they go ahead and produce it, and then they kind of package it together, and then they kind of put it out there for people to consume. Right from the get-go, I think, as a person who loves stories and loves telling stories, I was often moved by the underdog characters. I've often taken by, the characters that were a bit more imperfect. I liked my heroes or anti-heroes, so to speak, a bit more layered in that sense, a bit imperfect, a bit broken, a bit more nuanced in that sense. And I think I always gravitated since as a kid, to that anti-hero model. I think it was maybe me also partially like, imprinting on these characters and these heroes that I seen and watched when I grew up, and me wanting to tell that story for a new generation. I was very moved about like, you didn't have to be, this perfect character to be a hero. You could be flawed, you could be broken, but yet it's your strength, your resilience and all that. So a lot of that, those greater themes actually went into our very early world building concepts. Like, when we pivoted, we may play in genres that are science fiction, paranormal, normal drama, or rom-coms, but through and through, we always looked at our characters, and how they sat in it, and how these protagonists, so to speak, interacted, and how they behaved in these worlds. So in creating those worlds, I always said like, let's look at the imperfections of it, and even that kind of facilitated, that kind of also lend itself towards how we produce things. I wanted it to have a certain nuance or a certain anchor in realism, certain anchor in real people that I've met, interacted. They may not be the most perfect people, they may not be your classic template people, like they dictate like how a character should behave. And I love that. I loved, all these little anomalies that came into my life, interactions and people. And I used that, a lot of things that I took from real world, I kind of put it into my fictional world and just amped it up, and portrayed it for entertainment purposes, I guess, in very fictionalized characters, but yet they brought very real notes to it. And that has been through and through in all our projects actually that we put forth for broadcast and things like that. And it's also how we approach even our non-fictional works, what we do into that is to really look at the person, look at the character, look at this protagonist, so to speak, even in a documentary, like an interview setup. We do lots of docus and interviews, and in that also, I look at the person as like, okay, you are the protagonist. Okay, now tell me your story. What is it going to be? And the ebbs and flows of it, the inconsistencies, the imperfections, I use that, I take it in, and we kind of put that into our works. We try to surface that sometimes, and bring those characteristics into, be it our fictional work or our non-fictional work. I think, if I were to put my shoes of that of a student or a new filmmaker or emerging filmmaker, it's both an exciting and a scary place to be. If you come through some form of like academia or an educational pathway in narrative storytelling, in filmmaking and all that, you sometimes have that doctrine of like what you need to do and how it should behave and do that. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think sometimes that adds an added layer of anxiety, or added layer of stress. Like, things have to be a certain way because of what I was taught. And for me, coming into the working world, I always wanted to do big stuff. Like I was in neon, film, sound, video, and I had a lot of film peers. I had TV, CGI. We all majored in different things, and I was majoring in film. And film, there's indie film, and then I would dub it as like, I used to call it movies. And I think I always gravitated to movies. I always looked at what I wanted to do was to entertain people first and foremost, entertain them, and then I can spread my message, and then I can share my story. Then I can, so to speak, infect them with this ideology or this theme. And that's, I think, one of the things that I would say to the youth coming out today is go against the grain. Don't be afraid to go against the grain. If that's where you sit, that's where you want to be, go for that. Find, pursue it, I think with all that vigor and focus, just at the same time for someone who, let's say, wants to do it a classic way, a traditional way, go for it. I think it's about coming into the working world with that clarity. I think we were just talking about that earlier, right? Being able to come into this working world with a clarity of what you want to do, or at least what you want to do first. That's something else that I would probably like to add for the youth or the students that are coming into this arena is, do not think that you are going to be pegged into one hole in this industry. If there was ever an industry, it would be this film craft, this visual storytelling craft that gives you the option, that gives you the flexibility to change and evolve. In fact, sometimes it demands that you change and evolve, and embrace that. I would say, come into this industry ready to embrace all that it's going to throw at you, and then you would do really well. You would excel. You would, but I would still say, anchor it in something that is close to you. Because it's a long journey. One of the things I tell my team sometimes, the younger team members in the company, they come on board and everybody has, I have to do this by this date or this age, and and I had to hit all these markers, and only then I'm validated. And I want to tell them, no, that's not the case. Actually, coming into this industry, you're gonna learn as you go along. It's an evolving craft. Embrace that. You're gonna have highs and lows. It's an industry that unlike other jobs, perhaps it's one that forces you to, whatever you do, you're actually going to put it out there to public. It's going to be out there for people to take stabs at it, and it's going to bring you to very strange places, emotionally, mentally, as well as professionally, like what you're going to encounter. So my biggest takeaway would be, get ready to embrace all these experiences, but I think know yourself well enough and know that you don't have to fix this to a specific time. Like, you know, you don't have to lock it, like I have to do this within this period. I think if you acknowledge time as a certain constant in what we do, it's like you will get better. You may get that opportunity. You may not be that Cannes filmmaker as you come out of school, but if you pursue down that path, you know, with focus, you may get there one day. Even if you get there at 50, you know, so what? You know, maybe that's when you're supposed to land and be that Cannes filmmaker and make that phenomenal film, you know, or go for that Oscar, or, you know, go for that big payout. You know, I think the scariest thing is that youth come out with everything needs to be done in 7 seconds. You know, that's what scares me. Yeah. I would say in terms of like advice and looking at formats, you know, formats are constantly going to change, as will technology, and it's going to march forward. And I think if you as a content creator are just solely focused on the formats and the trends, you would reach a certain peak, you know, and that's where the burnout starts to happen, I feel. For myself, you know, coming out, we were film students who got to touch film, got to cut film, and, you know, have that name like filmmakers, like, makes sense because, yeah, we were, you know, playing with that medium, we were using it, we were filming in it, but we were just on that cusp because soon after that it went to digital. And you could see people either embrace it or be resistive to it. And it's the ones that embraced it that you see them march forward. You know, so from film it became digital. You know, it was HDs, and now we are moving to 4Ks, and we are going back to making digital stuff look like film. You know, with that kind of color profiles. You're going to with the advent of the smartphone, vertical, you know, squares. These to me are just new and actually exciting ways of communicating our stories. You know, don't look at them as crutches, don't look at them as also, oh, I'm only going to do that because it's trending. No, because things are all cyclic, you know. I feel like they would come back to, people want to watch slow TV again at one point. People might be actually, people are already watching movies on a you know, a mobile phone. And I think it's the nature of actually, what we're talking about actually is content consumption, you know, and I think viewers want to just consume content. And if it's good content, you know, that adage, that saying of content is king, I think that is that should be that hallmark. That should be the motto, I think, for a lot of emerging films. Content is king. You know, like, don't be bogged down about these mediums. In fact, be excited about it. Maybe now there is a format or a platform that actually allows you to express yourself, as opposed to before where it was just maybe traditional TV, traditional film, or photography. Now it's wide open, you know, and I would say, yeah, embrace that disruption, you know, and have fun with it. Yeah. I think when we started out in Monochromatic Pictures, when I kind of created that label, founded it, it was really to scratch that itch of wanting to tell stories my way. I was freelancing, I was doing projects for other companies, other producers, but, you know, in doing it well and in learning, I always found like, oh, you know, that wasn't my voice. You know, I had another story to tell. I wanted to tell, look at that character perhaps from a different perspective. You know, and the only way I could do that was to, like, level up, I guess. You know, I decided to, like, I'm going to start this label, I'm going to tell stories my way, and I thought it was going to be a piece of cake, but yeah, it wasn't. You know, the first few years were brutal. Like, you know, I think anybody wants to start a business or a company will probably know that, and across the board, industry, non-specific to any industry. But what happened in Mono was I felt I wanted to tell stories that were larger, because that's what I grew up on, that staple, you know, both from Asian as well as Western cinema. I always gravitated to things that were larger than life, and I think it was from watching movies. You know, I went in there, I was lost in that world for 2 hours, and I wanted to bring that experience into my stories, and I found that I could do that successfully to some degree, using normal conventions, you know, like just regular live action filming. I could do that. But then I felt like, no, I was also restrained, and that's where I looked at CGI. I looked at computer graphics, visual effects, and today we even incorporate practical effects into our things. I looked at this aspect of production design / like also digital enhancements, if you want to call it, these kind of CG characters and all that, to broaden my storytelling, and I was like, oh, and that excited me when we did our very first short film called Happy Place. It was a story of a sibling losing his sister, right? This brother losing his sister to a disease, and I was like, I could do it the way that she has, let's say, a cancer or this disease, and portray it in a normal way, but I went the fantasy route. And in order to do that, we exaggerated this production design, the styling. We brought in CGI to kind of use visual metaphors for what was happening to her, and it was all in good fun. But as a creator, it was like, yes, like technology also was allowing me to tell my story in this proper way, and I was really embracing it, and the work that also brought on, because CGI is not like you snap your fingers and you have it. Back in that day, it was a lot of work. I think hardware and software, it's not where it's at like today, but it allowed me, and I saw what happened with that, and I was really happy with it, and that film traveled. That film actually, even when it was viewed locally here, I think there were certain considerations, like peers were like, oh, okay, you're doing something different, and that was nice. That validation, all that hard work kind of paid off, and I started to do that. Like, it empowered me to the point where I didn't feel afraid of like CGI and bringing that into my stories. Next project came along, we upped it. Then we did it in series, in the television series, and from virtual we started to incorporate practical effects. We worked with a great team of now visual effects makeup artists, and they come in with prosthetics, this and that, and fast forward to today, across like paranormal series, sci-fi short films, it's all gone towards enhancing, but actually complementing, like what I want to say as a storyteller. So CGI is a great tool, to kind of look into and not be scared of it. And the advancements in CGI, in motion capture, and all these things are phenomenal. Softwares that we used back in the day, like Maya, 3D Max, and all that, are so much more advanced today, and they're integrating it with live action so much better. The appetite of today's audience and the youth are also to be thanked for it is they don't discriminate. Like, they see something CGI, they will, if it's good content, they will accept it. They see something in animation, and they take all these forms, and they're so varied in their appetites for content that it's great actually for a storyteller like myself, because I feel like, okay, like now I have to sit down and look at all these formats, all these tech, and I know via each of them I'll be able to reach out to a certain audience, and that's where I feel that it doesn't make my job feel tiring, or I don't feel like I've reached the end of my game, and that's what excites me. I think very early on, I do not know whether it was the stories I grew up with, or I would say it's probably a mix of the stories I grew up with as well as my life experiences, looking at things around me, my family, my friends, my classmates, and bringing all those little encounters, experience, and I kind of dropped it into maybe a little piggy bank of like either ideas or a little ditty bag that I could grab to go into and create characters from. So I grew up with that wealth of, I guess, experiences and stories that when it came time for me to present my own story or tell my own story, I found that I was telling a composite of these stories, and more often than not, I just felt like while there are very just plain old good old-fashioned entertaining stories out there that you go to maybe distract yourself, and then there are also stories that are very, like, let's say, introspective and heavy and things like that, and that were also out there trying to send a message across. when I consumed both as a filmmaker, as a student, coming out of, but I felt like couldn't find a middle ground. Could I find that middle ground whereby I could entertain someone, but yet also leave them with a takeaway from the end of it? And that, I think, subconsciously kind of melded into me, and like with Happy Place, with our first series, Purnama, and Anthology, to all the other series that we have done, like Avenue 13, Avenue 14, Devouring, they all started to become an allegory, I think, of my experiences on the whole. And when I say my experiences, it may not have been experiences that I went through personally, but what I took away from in my journey in life. And that's where I found, like, I wanted to tell these stories that were not so sugar-coated, not your classic sense of the hero or heroine, not that linear story. And I started to create those kind of worlds, create those kind of narratives, and put them out there. Because I started to feel like when I did my first one, it felt like, okay, I was doing something for myself as a filmmaker. But then I saw the responses. I saw a production manager in our office when she watched that film. She was a freelancer when she came in, and she watched it. She started to cry. She stepped away, she cried, and then she came out and said it reminded about her losing her mom to cancer, when she watched Happy Place. And I was like, oh, okay. And the next show that we did, like Super Force, which is a bunch of misfit kids, who are like oddballs in school, and they can't find their place, but they're empowered by superpowers, and how they rise and defeat the bad guy and get empowered and find themselves, find that identity. I got a note from one of the actors saying that when he went to a kid's birthday party, and the kid recognized him from the show and started talking about the show in this animated form. And that email till today is on our wall in the office. I printed it out, I laminated it, because for me it was that, ratings aside, success of the show aside, it's that one person. If I could help that one, or I could empower, I could touch one person out there with my story, I think that was good enough. Cut to today, whereby I'm a dad, I feel like I feel that responsibility even bigger right now. I want to put out stories there that someday that my daughter might watch and she could draw from. That if she's an outcast, an outsider, no, don't worry. That has this story that's all pegged out that shows you could rise from that. If she looks at my non-fictional work, our documentaries, Mono and Protagonist often have done lots of documentaries in the mental wellness and mental health space. It comes from both an education on our parts as storytellers, as well as a contribution, we feel, to a broader societal thing. These are stories from very brave people that we get to capture and put out there. So if there's one person who's out there who feels they can identify with the characters or could benefit from that story, mission accomplished. Yeah, I think very much from all the stories that we put out there, that we have shared, it's become like this this beacon for me, in the company, and I charge my creative team in that way. We do stories, yes, for the masses and all that, but we should do it also for that one person, out there who's going to watch it and take something away from it. Often I tell them, myself and my partner, doing what we do, there's a lot of stress. You can see that in the team. We have to create things, you have to put things out, you have to service clients, you have to do all sorts of stuff, and it can get overwhelming sometimes on the work of production, of filmmaking and all that. It's a task by itself. But where we try to dial it down and try to at least make our team feel at ease, is we often say we are not doing rocket science, or we're not finding the cure for cancer, doing what we do, but we may be actually inspiring. What I add on is we may be inspiring that kid or someone who might be that person who finds the cure for cancer via our stories, via what we put out there. So most of our stories, no matter whatever shape and form they take, they may be packaged in different genres. At the heart of it, it's actually about very strong, resilient characters. You know, it's about characters who have been through a lot and how they overcome it. And that very much, I feel, is an allegory in itself to even the mental health space of things. And what is very eerily ironic, or it's also how much production and even the mental health space, relate to each other, and can learn from each other. I feel like in doing projects whereby we have featured individuals with mental health issues and kind of shared their stories and put them out there online for the public and all that. We often handled it with a lot of delicacy, but also, there's a sort of honesty in it. Like, we wanted to also portray it right, not to sugarcoat it, like it is what it is, and we put these stories out as the best as we could. But I often feel like these stories that we do, we also learn a lot from it, and vice versa, like we are in a field whereby if you sometimes ever feel down, we're in the business of creating stuff. And I feel like that's one of the best places to be, to play around, to sometimes get yourself out of a funk. Like, dive into something that you are creating, do something positive out of it, and just get that out, like create, and then, like discover new things, like get empowered, and then like kind of conquer, whether it's a fear, whether it's something that you want to put out, just put it out. I think for the filmmakers who are coming on board this festival, right, like in terms of putting their stories out there, sharing them on these festivals, one of the things I think they have to bring forth is a brutal honesty. I think look at yourself, look at what you're capable of, what you have access to, and start creating that story from there. Don't limit yourself, of course, but that will be your launch pad, I feel. Don't try to be someone else. You may look at other things, you may get references, you may get inferences, you may get inspiration from other things, but sit down, take that time to find out, like, what's this story that I'm putting out? How is it related to me? What is in it? What is the anchor in it, that I can hold on to, I can sink my teeth into, and then start adding the layers to it. Start looking at the tools at hand, start looking at the technology, the software at hand. What can I do? Can I bring it in? Do I know how to use that software perhaps to, weave that in? It's a craft, right? And if you think, or if you pursue perfection, it could drain you, it could consume you. I do not know of a happy ending story from that pursuit, but I feel like, it's in that progression that, people should take it. Like, start with a basic concept, start adding the layers to it, but at the heart of it, if it's something that's honest to you and true to you, you will find your way. And I think that will also be seen in your work. Just like, like cooking a dish at home, if you make it with love, it's going to taste super yummy. And I think if you put out a video that is honest to you, it's your voice, the viewers, the audience is going to feel that. They're going to be moved by that energy. It's going to come over them and be like, yes, like that is true. That person's not trying to be so and so, or trying to mimic that, or trying to make it very commercial and things like that. So I feel like for this festival, that's what the filmmakers need to do. They have to put out these truthful things, and in the name of the theme is to not overthink things, not delve into the minutia of, like, negative comments and whatnot. Put your story out there. It's going to be either torn apart, loved and whatnot, but that is the creative process. You have to be ready for that. And if you embrace it and you stand strong, you're just going to be stronger and stronger, and you're going to get better and better in what you do, and you will find that voice as a filmmaker. If it's not even a filmmaker end goal, like, I think storytelling to the visual medium, and today you have such easy access with your mobile phones or cameras and everything, it's such a great outlet for sharing your story. And even if you put it somewhere on your social media or share it with a few person, it's going to affect someone. It may not bring in the millions of views and all that, but I would say put that away. In fact, I would like to extend something to the young content creators or the filmmakers coming on board, is that if your piece of video or content or story manages to touch one person, you get some kind of, whether somebody drops you a line, a personal message or whatnot, open up a conversation with that one person, like enjoy that moment actually, and actually that will be a real, I would say, an emotional anchor in what we do, because what we do can also get lost in the glitz, the glamour, the fluff of our industry, and if we don't have something in the essence, in the DNA that's honest, or something that we are passionate about, it's going to mean nothing at the end of the day. Yeah. I guess in closing, one of the things that I want to share, I guess, would be something that I tell my daughter like every day, with the little doodles or scrawls or scribbles that she does and all that, and she will show it to me and she'll be like, "Dad, is this okay?" And I would say like, yes, it's okay, like there's no right or wrong, like you don't have to color within the edges or, within the lines. There's no right or wrong in art, there's no right or wrong in the way we tell stories. We just have to do it. And I think that will be my biggest takeaway, or my biggest call out, is just go and do it, put it out there, and enjoy it, have fun with it actually, because that's what we are doing. We have a chance to be in a field whereby we get to play, we get to story tell, and we get to be kids again. And that's where I would like us all to get back, like go back to what made us join this industry, what moved us, what drove us into this arena. I view, I consume, I take in everything, even from like, student works and all that. When I used to go to GSA and see stuff and all that, I feel like where I'm at, as much as I can share something or mentor someone, I'm also a learner. And that's a great place, like I love to learn from the youth. I love to learn from it. And I think it's that we have to know that it's a ever ongoing process, it's an ongoing thing, it's a two-way street, so to speak. It's always evolving. And
yeah, because they have their own tone of talking to their generation as well.
Exactly,
so we have to learn from them.
Exactly, yeah. That's why I cannot diminish and say like TikToks are bad,
No.
You must be a filmmaker. No, man, like, it's like, okay, you're telling me a story via this medium. Okay, I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to see what you're trying to tell me, and study it, understand from it, learn from it, and can I use it then, it's so, I think that's that process. I think it's that communication, and that's what storytelling is. It's that sharing of experiences, information, energies in a story. And it's very much also in this mental wellness, mental health space. People shouldn't be afraid to voice out what they want. They shouldn't have to frame their minds and think it has to be packaged and only then can I share it with the world. Like sometimes just go ahead and share out, open yourself, be vulnerable, be open, and embrace both the positive and the negative, use it to arm yourself. Use maybe the positive to strengthen you, use the negative to learn from it. How do you overcome it? And that's filmmaking, that's mental health and wellness.